So, Pope Francis just recently affirmed gender theory. A bunch of transgender people, men dressed up as women, had a meeting with Pope Francis, and Pope Francis called them daughters of God. Now, Crooks Now magazine, which is a big Catholic American publication, translated Francis's words as children of God. So basically, the editors back at Crooks were like, how do we make this sound normal? How do we not make the Pope look bad? Oh, just say children of God. But if you look at the actual Spanish, because Pope Francis is from Argentina, so he speaks Spanish. If you look at the Spanish word that he used, it's hija. He called these trans people hijas de Dios, daughters of God. Now, hija means child, but it's in the feminine sense. So he said daughters of God. Now, if he wanted to use the word in the general sense, he would have said, in other words, if he wanted to say children, just children in the general sense, he would have said hijos, because in the Spanish language, hijo can mean son, but if you're talking about boys and girls, and you're using the word in its most general manner, you would use hijo. But that's not what Papa Francisco said. He said hijas. Hijas de Dios, daughters of God. When they're not daughters, they're not women, but Pope Francis is affirming the gender theory ideology. But this is not surprising at all. This is the Pope who said that civil unions between men are necessary. He supports civil unions, which is gay marriage. This is the Pope who literally defends the worst of the worst. Here in the United States, there was a child murderer and rapist named Johnny Johnson. He tried to rape a 6-year-old girl and then murdered her, slaughtered her, brutally murdered her. And Pope Francis's American representative, his spokesperson, wrote a letter to the government of Missouri begging the government not to execute Johnny Johnson. And the state of Missouri said, okay, we're going to put a stay on his execution. And all the Catholics who are against the death penalty, being against the death penalty is the official narrative of the church. All the Catholics who were defending this monster were in celebration. They were like, yay, mercy wins. And then a couple of days later, the state of Missouri's like, yeah, the stay is over. He's going to die. And the state of Missouri executed Johnny Johnson. So Pope Francis coming out and calling a bunch of trans people hijas de Dios, daughters of God, when they're not women, they're not daughters, it's just another event that further proves how corrupt the Catholic Church is. Today I was reading up on the sex abuse scandal in the Archdiocese of New Orleans. And the lawyers representing the various sex abuse victims of the Archdiocese of New Orleans put together a memo talking about how in 50 years there were around 300 pedophiles in the Archdiocese of New Orleans. The number actually is 310. And this is just the number of pedophiles that they were able to document. There were a lot more, because you have all sorts of Catholic pedophiles that were in the past, and they were protected and they were covered up, etc., etc. But these lawyers were able to document 310 pedophiles in the Archdiocese of New Orleans in 50 years. That's a lot. That is a lot, because obviously the population of priests is always going to be a relatively small number in comparison to the general population. So the fact that you have hundreds of pedophile priests and also lay employees who are pedophiles is pretty serious. That's pretty revealing as to how corrupt and decayed the institution of the Roman Church is. And out of these 310 pedophiles, how many did the Catholic Church deliver to the authorities? How many of these 310 pedophiles did the Catholic Church hand over to the authorities? About 24. And how long did it take for the Catholic Church to deliver these criminals to law enforcement, to the authorities? 2 decades. That's how long. Which means that the Catholic Church was protecting these monsters and really only handed them over to the authorities due to pressure. So it's very, very sick. And the institution it's rotten. It's rotten to the core. Out of the 310 pedophiles, the Catholic Church deemed around, I want to say, 77 or so as not credibly accused. So the Catholic Church will still defend dozens of these pedophiles even after they are confirmed to be pedophiles, confirmed to have been pedophiles. It's sick. And the whole thing is just rotten. So Pope Francis coming out and saying, yeah, these trans people are daughters of God. I mean, this is another tip of the iceberg. Another tip of the iceberg, and the ship has really just sunk at this point. I mean, once you start delving into that evil, it's gone. That's it. I mean, it's just gone. Once you have embraced Sodom, it's gone. And this was the warning that St. Paul gave to the Church of Rome. I mean, the Roman Catholic Church is the Church of Rome that St. Paul wrote a letter to. We talk about Romans, right? The epistle to the Romans. That was an epistle written to the Roman Catholic Church. And Paul warns them about Sodom. And he talks about how when humanity embraced Sodom, that was the point when God gave them up. And what is the Roman Church doing? Calling Sodom daughters of God. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.